Okay, Hey Justin, how you doing?
I'm awesome.
So, just for the audience, just to let you guys know, this is really the podcast that I create about co-parenting, and I try to talk to. Whoops, hang on. There's a little feedback there for my other audio. Um, we're basically what we're trying to do is bring awareness of this issue, and I think it's it's a problematic issue in a lot of relationships. And if we could bring this light and have this conversation, these are obviously our personal stories, our personal opinions. They're not meant for to be an expert and all that. So if you need advice, please go seek a professional help. But this is our discussion about our experiences and what we did to get there. So in the meantime, and in between time, I want to bring Justin in, and just to kind of give you a background where I met Justin. I met Justin on TikTok, and he has been pretty relentless on TikTok and telling his story. But it's a story that needs to be told, and it resonates a lot with me because I have similar experiences that you did, Justin. And you really are blowing up on TikTok, and I admire for you to do that. And just to start with, how did you get on? Why TikTok?
Well, first of all, I don't understand hardly any of the social media platforms except for maybe Facebook, and I have a pretty sizable business page on Facebook, which is how I built my personal business. That has nothing to do with social media or marriage and divorce or parental alienation. And TikTok all of a sudden was just sort of a entertainment pastime. I started a business TikTok page for that same business and it kind of blew up, but I kind of ran dry on material. And one day I posted a video. This was probably a year ago. I posted a video that had been taken a couple of months previous off of my phone that was more talking about the experience that I went through in the juvenile court system to surrender the parental rights for my three younger kids. And I videoed that as I submitted the application for that in my truck as I left the courthouse. So the emotions were raw, and I wanted to capture what I was feeling at that point in time, um, with no real hope of doing anything with it other than just to grasp what I was feeling. And then I ended up posting that several months later to TikTok, and it it took off. It developed a mind of its own, and um, there was a lot of lovers and haters, and there was a lot of commenters and arguers, and in the initial part of something like that, I think a person feels almost obligated to jump back at the haters and right the wrongs that are in the comment section. And I quickly realized that it, the good comments and the negative comments are equally as positive in a situation like TikTok. And at this point, I kind of allow that platform, the dad from a distance platform on TikTok, to be kind of my video journal. Uh, the thoughts that I have on a daily basis with what I'm dealing with now, that goes into that. And then I also get plenty of opportunities to respond to comments and questions. What I didn't expect in on that platform is all of the messages that I get from struggling parents who, you know, are everywhere from this happened to me years and years ago to um, I get a lot of messages, sadly, of people who had decided to end their lives until they saw one of my videos, and then realized that they weren't alone as they read through the comment section of people who have the same experiences.
Yeah. Yeah, just for the audience to know, there's 20% of men after the divorce are suicidal. That's the percentage, and a lot of them go bankrupt and or face struggles, stress. I don't know the numbers on that, but it's high, because it's really a system that's not fair. It's really carved to be one way. It's a win, and it's a win at all cost, more or less. That's how the court's designed on this. And what happens to men is they're expected to give a lot up front, and a lot of it is a cost to the man trying to live a life, and they're stuck in a bad way, and then all of a sudden they feel like the shame comes because they can't support a family, the shame of they couldn't hold a marriage, the shame of all these things that come onto a man, and then they just don't feel the worth, and then I know I was thinking about suicide. I don't know about you, but that's how I felt. There was one time where I felt that everything was coming down so hard that what's the point? I
I
mean, there
mean,
was really a point,
when
but I don't know
you
where
go
you
to,
were. Yeah,
yeah,
good.
you go through the family court process, and it's really designed to be drawn out and painful, and it's designed to milk everybody involved of every last dollar and every last asset. And typically, family courts are biased against the men for whatever reason. Um, I think that's the most lucrative method because the I guess the court system believes that the man has more resources and more assets and more ability to go work and get a second job. And boy, the stress and pressure of having to meet the demands of your ex-wife and your visitation schedule and the kids' needs and their emotional needs with the attorney's fees and the court requirements and meeting with all of the professionals involved in the process. And then if you can't pay your child support in some states, you can lose your driver's license and you can go to jail. If you're paying alimony and child support, you're probably not even able to provide for your own self. And then life always continues to move forward, and us as humans aren't designed to be alone. So we find a new interest and potentially a new relationship. And boy, it ends up being
Yeah.
more than what most people can handle.
So let's walk through the early days of your marriage. I mean, were you married before her, or how? And were you?
Yep.
And how did you meet and all that?
So I met her right after my first divorce. I was the first marriage ended. I had two kids. One was 3 years old, 3.5, and one was 5 months old. And we were too young to be married, honestly, and that didn't work out.
But do you have a
Um,
cordial relationship with her, the first wife?
yeah, at this point, me and my two oldest kids have a great relationship with her.
Good.
She's married to a pretty good guy, and he kind of straightened her out quite a bit, and they have a pretty good thing going, and that's made a really good situation for my two older kids. They were separated away from her for a handful of years, and as they got older, um, they were able to redevelop a relationship with her, and it's really good for them. It's pretty
Yeah.
healthy as far as I'm
Awesome.
concerned. So my
So
second, go
yeah.
ahead.
No, no, no. That's a good point, because I wanted to know that, because a lot of people say, "Well, you're just a bad guy because you went through one divorce, you went through another." Knowing that you had a relationship with somebody and you ended the relationship, but you still are cordial and have a good relationship, and you're kind of like, I mean, you're sort of a family still in some ways, right? You're still
It wasn't always that way.
no, but I'm
When
talking about
wife,
afterwards. It's a good thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
now her and her husband, they live in a different state, but they come over for holidays if they're in town. We'll have
Oh, awesome.
a big family dinner, and it's a our oldest got married a little over a year ago, and we were all at the wedding, and me and her husband could joke back and forth about his wife with her two husbands there. I mean, it was a
Yeah.
good time. We get along real well, and I talk to her quite regularly about
Good.
the two oldest kids. So
Well,
Yeah,
I was
I'm not just a problematic
no,
individual.
no, but I was trying to make this point because that's where, but it shows that you are capable. I mean, don't be wrong. Divorce sucks to begin with, and you are going to have fights. You're going to have issues, and it's about money. It's about possessions, about all this stuff, and it's about ego mostly. And once the two figure out that it's, and especially children, it's better to get along because it's about the children. That changes it. And I'm sure you had to go through that pain to discover it was about the children. And the cool thing about that conversation, and I want to make this as a baseline because when we jump into the next relationship, it's going to change a little bit because the conversation is going to go more of two different directions, trying to manage kids. And I think that's what most people don't understand. Just because you're divorced and because someone's being mean to you, parental alienation, it you got to look at all his history of life. There, if he's got friends, he's had good relationships. They broke up, yeah, they're still together, or whatever the case may be. That's a good person. I mean, yes, you're not going to have not every breakup or every situation is going to be perfect, and not everybody's going to be your friends. But I want to make this point because I want to make sure that people understand that you're not a bad guy just because you're in this situation. So now let's talk. So I hope that makes. I want to make that clear to the audience. But the thing that I want to now talk about is how did you meet the second wife, and what was the between? Was it like a year later, 2 years later, or how did that work out?
Boy, so I grew up in a pretty religious environment, and divorce was a bad thing, and being a single dad with two little kids was also a bad thing.
Right.
And so, wife number two comes into the picture relatively quick. I My family knew her family, and we got to be personally acquainted almost immediately after my first divorce
There's a
finalized.
history. There's a history there then of family.
Not a personal history between me and her, but there is definitely a family history.
Okay.
That our two families go back as friends and enemies for almost three generations. So,
Oh wow. So
uh,
there's lineage. That's awesome. Okay.
yeah, yeah, and we hit it off pretty quickly. Looking back on all of this, it was now I probably have to start this by saying this isn't a smear campaign against her. This is my personal experience, and so what I've noticed in my social media journey is that as I tell my story, it doesn't always make the other characters in the story look good.
Correct. Yeah.
So her and I started to communicate. It was the very first text message I ever sent anybody on a flip phone with the T9 keyboard, and I sent her a text, something. I had laryngitis, so I couldn't talk, so I sent a text. That was the next best thing. And then she sent me like 15 text messages back before I could even respond to her first text. And immediately it was a lot of emotion. There was, looking back, it was love bombing is what it was, but it was it was powerful. And according to what I could see, the stars aligned, and the universe opened up and dropped this person right in front of me when I had two young kids, and we dated with a long distance relationship for a couple of months, and then I proposed to her right around Thanksgiving, I'm guessing that year, which would have been almost 2 months after my divorce finalized. And
What was the time frame again? Was 2 years you're saying?
no, it was, so my divorce finalized sometime around the 1st of October, and then
Oh.
towards the end of November, me and wife number two had gotten acquainted, and spent some time together, and had a long distance relationship between two states,
Hmm.
and I felt like she was the one. I honestly felt like God told me that she was the one, and so I proposed. And right around Christmas time, we were talking about a wedding date, in June, July, sometime in the summer. And she said, why don't we just do it right now? And so in January, we sealed it
Hooked up.
off and did the deal and got married, and life started. And it was a roller coaster from the very beginning. And
So was that like a shotgun wedding almost, kind of, or was it?
yeah, it was, I mean, it was short planned. Her family provided some food, and we picked a church house, and had a it was a small wedding. Um, it's funny that as we go through all these experiences of life, that this is what teaches us how to be better people, or how
Mm.
to be more successful, or how to do it better the next time. And looking back, I just think, man, it's no wonder that it ended how it did, because of how it started. And it was a love bombing situation, and I was eating it up because I was getting attention that I had never really had before.
So you're talking about love bombing, and love bombing can come in so many different ways. Guys do it, women do it, kids kind of do it too when they're young. They're like, "Oh, daddy, give me a hug," kind of stuff like that, and that's endearing type thing. Um, so give me an example of what a love bombing situation, because I never got love bombed by a woman before. So I, don't- I want to know what does that look like?
So immediately it was viewed as a godsend. I mean, of the billions of people in the universe, we are the only two. And I was made for her, and she was made for me. And even to where she knew, um, when I got married the first time, she was, and I don't know, 15, 16 years old when I got married the first time. And she said when she saw that wedding invitation come addressed to her parents, she knew that she would be married to me one day. And from her perspective, it was all, from what she claimed, everything in the universe aligned over our lifetimes to put us in the place where we were. And I didn't really care, because I was getting attention from somebody that felt like it was right. And going back, I don't know how I would have done it any differently, unless without knowing what I know now.
So were you
But the
thinking,
love,
we just kind of touch it, like, were you feeling some avoidance issues? Were you feeling like you were missing something during that period of time that kind of just allowed you to kind of get trapped into that?
so what I experienced with adult relationships up to that point was was probably, well, it was juvenile. Honestly, when I married my first wife, I was 21. I think she was 18. We were kids. And so when you take kids trying to be full grown adults, trying to do the adult thing, and start a family, there's only so much that you can give each other. And wife number two shows up in the picture, and she had been in the military. She had deployed to Iraq for a couple of years before we met. She had a lot of world experiences. She had a lot of experiences with men in general, from when she was a high school student all the way up to that point. And so it sounds kind of strange to say that she knew how to pull my strings more than I knew how to pull anybody's strings. And that kind of paints the picture for what's going to come in the relationship and in the marriage, where she basically dictates everything. I'm a big, strong guy. I've been self-employed since I was a teenager. I've been in charge of my own bills and my own finances and my own debt and my own credit. And she came into the picture, and for some reason, I allowed her to take control of all of that. And I don't know that she was doing it necessarily to be nefarious and to be evil, and she grew up a pretty traumatized lifestyle and with her family. She had a sibling that died when he was young, and there's just a lot of history in her life. And I truly believed at that point that the way she conducted herself and the way that she manipulated things and the way she controlled things and the little tiny white lies that she would tell other people as she related just everyday common stories, I felt like that was her way of controlling the world that she lived in. And that was accurate. It just got better over time.
So now you're in this marriage now. What were the value? Was there any values, like when you look back at the first couple years or even the first beginning? What was the value structure? Was there any morals that you guys connected with? Like, I heard church, so I'm assuming you're both churchgoers. You're going to church Sundays. Um, but what was there any foundation you think that, or was it all quicksand?
We were growing up in Idaho and Utah. We were both in the LDS or Mormon religion, and there we did have that foundation. We were both trying to live according to the way that the church or the religion had taught us to live. And as we got married, she immediately became the mother to my two children that I had.
Mm.
Immediately, she put herself right in the mother role, um, and we it was almost like we followed the rules or the methods of the religion, except when certain things, it's hard to explain. She had a way of making exceptions for rules that she didn't feel like following
Mm.
occasionally. And she would say things like, well, I've earned the right to do this fill in the blank.
Yeah.
And that first year, the intimacy was like, I don't want this to sound like I'm bragging about it because it's not. Looking back, it was toxic, but the intimacy was out of this world, mind blowing, universe shattering. It was like more than I had ever
It was like,
experienced or even imagined in my
so it
life.
was
And
intense. It was
it,
intense
it
with
was
that.
it was intense. And I was completely smitten, completely head over heels, completely right in line with, if she was going to control me, she did a great job of it.
So what? Okay, so there's a couple things there I heard. Number one, the mother portion that made you feel good because I took some pressure off you, so you could focus on your business, right? That was probably a good. So that was sort of like that's a for males. I think that's like an endearing thing. You know, you're taking care of my children, which is awesome. I love that. Um, just from my perspective and how in my relationships with other people. I remember, when they took kind to my kids, I really loved that. That felt really good. Um, the other thing is, obviously the bedroom was hot by the sounds of it. And that so you had a couple things going on where she was giving by the sounds of it. She was actually really giving you um, the loving that you were looking for, seeking at the time, because number one, you weren't experiencing it, and that's that. How much into the relationship you started to see fractures? Like, where were the red flags that you saw that you went, wait a minute, there's something wrong here?
So when we got together and we start to talk about finances and religion and life and kids and family and all the things, there were two really important things for me that I titled as deal breakers. And I had worked for a while in the banking industry, and my finances and my credit were very important to me. And so the one thing that I said is, I can put up with a lot as a husband. I can forgive a lot as a husband, but I can't look past somebody walking into my life and messing up my credit and screwing up my finances. And so that probably wasn't an important enough conversation when I had it looking back. But what that did was it tipped her off on something else that she could then kind of slide into and control. And I have a hard time telling the parts of this story because it makes me look like I was, led around by my small
Incompetent.
brain and yeah, that I was, oh, this guy, surely he wasn't that dumb. But
You could kick your
when
ass.
you
You could kick your ass right now if you want. Just I mean,
when you
we all do stupid things. Don't I mean? I understand what you're saying, and don't get me wrong. I've done it, and I've allowed people to take control of something that I shouldn't have allowed control, and it's okay. I mean, really, Justin, it's okay to feel this way because that's a pride thing, brother. That's a pride thing. You feel pride about that. That's one thing you felt that you had more control. I'm sure the rest of the stuff you didn't really care. I mean, other than your children, I should say, and your
yeah
family. But it's okay to talk about that, Justin, because that is something that you need to understand. That's a no deal. Like you said it's a no deal. You can't, we're not going to go forward with that. That's a never, I call those never again moments. Never again, I'm going to allow this person or anybody in my life to do this. So, I mean, just understand that it happens. So don't, don't beat yourself up.
well, I guess I'm thinking, what are the viewers going to think?
You know what? Who
I
cares
can
about?
move past I can move past that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so shortly, right after that, she wanted to take over paying the bills. I mean, I kept spreadsheets of every dollar that I spent. And I had an Excel spreadsheet and I knew where all my bills were. I can literally go back 10 years and I can see where the bills were that I paid, the gas, the power, the light, the mortgage, all the things. And she decided to take that over. She insisted on taking it over, and I allowed it, right? So I went to a I went to a training for my profession. I'm a horse dentist. Most people have never met one.
Wait,
There's
wait.
not very many of us around.
A horse. I don't mean to laugh, but a horse dentist. Really? Seriously?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow.
That's what I do full time. Is I
You don't
file on horses' teeth and
do you
make
fly
sure they
around
can
the
eat
world?
right.
Do you fly around?
No, I drive quite a bit in my region. I,
Okay.
I drive in the whole entire Rocky Mountain region is my office now.
Okay. Oh, that's
Um,
cool, actually. That's awesome.
so I went to a training and I was going to buy some new equipment, and I put out one of my credit cards on the table to buy the equipment that I was buying, and they swiped it and it was declined. So I thought that was strange. So I pulled out another credit card, swiped it, and it was declined. And this week I was on the hook for probably seven or eight thousand dollars worth of course and equipment. And boy, I called the credit card companies, and they're like, "Well, it was declined because they're both maxed out." And I hadn't used my credit cards in a long time, so I call home and I'm like, "Hey, tell me about this." And she's like, "Oh, I had to pay some bills. Remember you gave me your credit card number a while back to make a payment," and of course she kept that number, and then she pulled the other card out of my wallet and used that one, and both of my credit cards were maxed out, and so I had to come up with other ways to pay for the money that
How
I
much?
then owed.
How much? Just can you give me a number?
We're probably $12,000-15,000 between the two.
Ouch.
um, and that, I mean, at that point in my life, that was a lot.
That's it is a lot. Says a lot today. 15,000.
And she would collect the credit card bills out of the mailbox. She would get the mail every day, and so she was able to divert the statements away from me. Um, And when I found that out, I was livid. I mean, I was extremely upset because I told her that that was the deal breaker. Like that was going to be the line that you just don't cross. Like at that point in time, I could forgive an unfaithful wife if she wanted to hobnob with the neighbor. I could forgive a lot of things, but at that point in time, that was one thing that was like the unforgivable sin in my world. And what did I do? Of course, I forgave her.
Mm.
She swore up and down it wouldn't happen again. We worked hard to get them paid off, and then the whirlwind or the roller coaster of life continued, and then we moved literally overnight back to Utah from Idaho, where we got married and where I had a house. My house sat empty for a couple of weeks until it sold, and everything that we did was like when we got married. We got married in like within 10 days of talking about what the date is going to be, and then we
Chaos.
moved we moved to another state overnight because her family needed help on their farm, and there was going to be new opportunities there for us. So we moved in with her mom, who is another mess of a person. And the house that she was living in at the time, her parents had divorced, and her dad was living down the street with his dad, and they were running the farm, and her mom was in the house that they built 15 years previous. And to give you an idea of the mess that it was, we hauled off 6,000 pounds of garbage out of the house so we could move in. That was the mess that we moved into.
And you stayed.
And
I
and
know you,
I
you stayed. God
I
love you.
well, the chaos got so much worse. So my first wife, wife number two had really kept close tabs on wife number one, and she involved wife number one in all of our holidays, all of our family reunions. It was really common for me to show up with my two wives, is how people kind of saw it. And
How did
really,
you how did you just sorry, how did you feel about that?
well, I'd never been divorced before,
Yeah.
and so I
But you
kind of thought
is
that
you
it
are you cordial with your first wife now, or are you still kinda like odds?
now I am.
No, no, at the time where
Oh, at that time, no, we were cordial,
okay.
but it, that was a ticking time bomb, is what that was, because um, wife number one remarried, got divorced,
Mm.
remarried again, got divorced, all in probably a 2 year period or 2.5 year period. And then she married an individual who had a criminal history that we were very concerned about. And then we went to family court, and we had a very expensive, long court battle with custody of the two kids. And at the end of that, that was where we I cut all ties with my first wife, and she decided to sign over her parental rights because she lost the court case because of the man she was married to, and she was going to end up having to pay me child support. And not only that, but she had gone into debt, probably 60 or $70,000, and she borrowed money from her parents' retirement to pay those attorneys' fees, and it was really a big mess. And I hate to think about it now and how I contributed to that. Looking back and now reconnecting with wife number one, I know what was the incendiary device that created a lot of those problems. Her husband was problematic, but I didn't know what wife number two was doing behind the scenes without my knowledge. And so wife number one adopts the oldest two kids. It was like I never even talked to the attorney. She came home, she said, "Hey, wife number one is signing over her rights." And I went ahead and told the attorney to hurry up and draw up the adoption papers, and we have a court date next week. And I didn't know anything about this. I knew nothing about it, and it was just a, like, again, more of a roller coaster. And right about that time, her dad died on the farm from a horrific accident, and uh, we had a baby about that time, and there was a lot going on in the world that I, as a male mind, I only have so much space in my head for so many things, and then I have to just let the rest of it fade away. And so
Wow.
with the things that we were trying to do in life, I just went along with most everything that I could, because at that point still I was very convinced that wife number two was the
The one.
patron saint that she had painted herself to be.
It just reminds me of chaos every single day. Just constant chaos, constant drama, constant. There was no peace in the house.
Looking back, when we had peaceful time periods, she created more chaos,
Yeah.
because that's where she tends to thrive and tends to exist. Um, I preferred the quiet, boring times,
They're
as
the
I
best
describe
time, actually. They're
as
the
I
best
describe
times.
my as I describe my life now and my relationship that
Yeah.
I'm in now. It's boring and it's
Uh, I
amazing.
love it. I love
Yeah,
it. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I get it. So, wow. So
So
much to
we
unpack
go through with the adoption, and the kids call her mom, and the kids came back from a phone. They had a phone call or a visit with their biological mom, I think, right around that time. And my oldest daughter, which was probably 5 or 6, maybe 7 years old at the time, she came back and she says, "Dad, I don't even want to call her mom anymore, because she's my kids have been drugged through this 2.5 year family court thing with guardian
it.
ad litems,
How old are they
and
now? I'm sorry. How old are they?
now they're 21 and 18.
No, at the time. I'm
At
sorry.
that time, I think they were like 7 and 4.
Oh,
And
very
so the 7 year old, it has always been beyond her age in maturity in her brain. And she specifically requested not to have to call the other one mom anymore. And I allowed that to happen. I didn't know what to say, honestly. And the biological mom, my first wife, she divorced the problematic guy she was married to, and she moved out of state. And I didn't hear anything from her for probably 7 or 8 years.
wow. You know that okay, I don't mean to I feel bad about that because I know from a father's perspective of having distance like that, that sucks. I just couldn't I mean I for 7 years, that's a long time.
Well, the reuniting of those three, her and the two kids, really is a good it's a good conclusion to a bad story.
No, I understand that, but just
And
just the experience, I just that just really was hard for her.
well, it, talking to her now, yeah, it was excruciating. She had one other child with the second and third husband, which was the same guy.
Yeah.
And luckily she didn't have one with the problematic one.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
And um she but that time period, so had she because she was a registered nurse at that time, so had she been required to pay child support to me, which was, I want to say it was, she was paying probably $1,200 a month in child support for the two kids.
Yeah.
And that's what and I ended up with sole custody
Wow.
from that court deal. And um she I think about the last conversation her and I had, and it was, I mean, she was incredibly emotional because she knew what she had just done. She had just gone through and signed away her rights, and She owed me quite a bit of money of back child support. And,
How did that make you feel?
you
Or
know,
were you just numb to this whole situation?
the chaos in my everyday life drowned out how I should have felt. Because while that's going on, we're dealing with, I mean, everything else that we live a life of chaos at this point.
So now let's move past that point. Now your daughter is like saying, I don't want to talk, I don't want to call her mom. And obviously that's triggering something, right? The next, like, she's probably like, why can't she call me mom? I'm her mom. I bet that's probably the conversation you guys are having. Is that about right?
Well, she 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 understood that when she terminated her parental rights, that was going to
No,
be it.
no, mother number two.
Oh, mother number two came in the picture. She's just like, well, they'll call me mom now, and that's how it was.
Oh,
And that's really that's what she wanted. And I look at her now, and she controls every single person that's in her entourage. And the very second that there's any dissent in any of the people that she controls, you're kicked out
all right.
immediately.
Yeah, that's something I want to stick on your story because I think your story is very, very important for people to hear it. So now you're in this now you're trucking down this relationship. Your kids are full time with you. The ex number one is gone, and
We've got we have we
you got
have
the
one
farm,
we
the
have
dad.
one
Yeah,
kid on the ground between the
yeah.
two of us and another one on the way.
Wow. Are they like within like a year of each other?
The younger three are within 2 years. They're 2 years apart.
Okay. Wow. Bang bang.
And we had three total. Um,
Mm.
there there was there was a quiet time in our lives, and we started a dog business, a dog breeding and training business that really grew. I mean, I couldn't believe what our tax returns said every year. The amount of gross income that we had on this dog business was, it blew my mind. And I want to say that our biggest grossing year was like 450,000 gross
Wow.
profit on this dog business
Now was that that she ran?
that
So
she
now,
ran.
I'm sure she's fudging the numbers, right?
Well, we're paying taxes off of this income. So, but every year that we made more and more money, we had nothing to show for it. It didn't matter if we made 100,000 or 400,000, we were always farther behind at the end of the year.
Hmm.
And the chaos moved from the court situation with wife number one to the dog business. And she always had problems in the dog business with dog owners and dog buyers. There was always somebody threatening to sue her, or an attorney giving her a letter for things that she promised that didn't deliver. And of course, I never saw any of this firsthand. I never dealt with any of these people. I only heard the her discussing what the day's news was, what the current frustrations were. And everybody was always out to get her according to her version of the story.
Hmm.
And I'm trying to farm her family farm while, and there it's a decent acreage, but not enough of an acreage to
Make a
provide
difference.
an income, to
Yeah.
provide for a family. We inherited a herd of cows, so she inherited the family farm. And her dad died, and then her grandpa died a few years later, and he sidestepped all his other existing kids and gave her the farm. And that was a little bit of a controversy in and of itself. But here I am, just trying to stay afloat, trying to keep the cows alive, do the things that needed to be done with the farm, and raising the hay and irrigating and maintaining the equipment while I'm trying to do my own horse dentistry business.
So how old are
And
you? How old are you now?
So by now I'm probably 30, early 30s.
So you do have energy.
I mean, yeah.
You had
So also,
energy. Yeah.
also she's having night terrors every night from that she calls war dreams. And my job as the man in this situation was to try and stay up late enough during the night that I could wake her up from her war dreams and let her know she's not there anymore. She's right here. Everything's good. Everything's fine. And then I decided to go back to college and finish up a degree. And the dog business is moving on, and where she gets into training law enforcement dogs, the bite dogs and drug dogs, and she
Is
went
she
to an
actually
army.
is she actually a dog trainer?
She was.
Oh,
She doesn't
was.
train dogs anymore.
Okay.
I can only speculate on why she quit, but I think that she had a hard time delivering to the law enforcement agencies that were wanting to contract her for her services.
Okay.
Um, Around 2014, she went to a military training where she retrained as a behavioral health technician for the National Guard, and she'd already had a bachelor's degree in psychology, and so reclassing or retraining her military career seemed to fit more. She'd had some injuries from her deployment, and so she was like on the partial disabled list. Um, and so she was gone for 5 months retraining with the military in Texas, and that kind of opened up the next chapter, which again is another story that's really difficult to verbalize because I think how could I have been so naive and so dumb? But really, I was just overwhelmed with the reality of our life.
You think that was intentional?
I don't think it was part of a master plan. I don't think that I don't think it was planned the way it turned out, but I
No,
think
you
it was
think
a
it was intentional for her to overwhelm you?
she's just a lot of a person. Her brain runs at a higher level than most people. She gets up early. She's busy on the laptop all day long. She can multitask better than anybody else I've ever met. And but when life slowed down and it allowed me to evaluate where we were at any point in time, it didn't take her long to drum up something else.
She needed
So
to validate herself. She needed chaos.
I think she needed chaos to be able to. She wasn't ever the savior, like she wasn't. It wasn't like she's saving the day. It's just that she needed the people around her to be constantly on edge, constantly looking for the bad guy, and that it leads into my government conspiracy story that I have mentioned a couple times in
Yeah.
the TikTok
Yeah.
platform, and I
Yeah. Let's not
like
go there though.
what's
No,
that?
let's not go there. Let's stick with your story.
Well, it no, it's not what you think.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Yeah.
so she comes back from her military training, and supposedly some things happened there. She ran into somebody from her old unit from when she deployed, and supposedly the story that she has told since the beginning of time is on her deployment she was subject to some very serious and repeated and prolonged military sexual trauma, and which wasn't unheard of for women in the military, especially in that time period. And so from day one, when she shared some of these experiences with me, I understood that I was with a woman who, for all intents and purposes, should have not even existed anymore. She should have been completely destroyed in all the things that she experienced. And she told a story that of how she had been. I don't know. I guess we can talk about all things here. She told a story of how she had been raped for like a 2-week period every day by one of her superior officers when she was in Iraq. And so my heart broke for this woman when I found this out in the very beginning of our marriage. And I think this is part of why I felt like I was her knight in shining armor. Like I could
You were the fireman.
save,
You were
like,
the
yeah,
captain.
like I could save her from this horrible story that she had experienced before I came along. So
Well,
2004,
let's hang on one sec. Let's just fast forward now. Do you think you're still the savior?
I don't think much of her story actually happened.
No, what I mean is when you're in a new relationship, do you have that mindset of thinking you're the savior of that person? Have that
No,
taught you? No. Okay, good. All right.
no.
That's a good answer.
That's an amazing question, actually. No, I don't feel that way. I don't feel like the woman that I'm with now, that I need to save her from any of her past traumas or her current choices or anything like that. We're able to look at things relatively uneventfully and be like, well, that was dumb. Now what?
No,
And
that was a superb answer because that means you've learned.
yeah, I learned very slowly, but it was drilled into my head for sure.
Brother, we all learn slow. Trust me, we all learn slow.
Oh man.
Uh, we try to
And
live. Yeah,
so
go ahead.
and
Yeah.
so the person that she ran into when she was at her training in Texas apparently knew of what she had gone through in Iraq.
Hmm.
And he apparently got arrested. Now you have to listen to this part of the story and understand that I was married to a pathological liar at this point.
I'm sure. Yeah.
So everything that I say, I'm going to end it with, and I realized it was all a lie. So that's why I call it the government conspiracy story, because um, that individual that she met in Texas, and again, I visited her in Texas a couple times. I took the kids a couple times to visit her on weekends, but I was not there in person. And all of these stories that literally governed our lives, I was never present for. So the person that she met in Texas apparently broke into her dorm and he got himself arrested. And in order to get a lesser punishment, he was willing to tell a story that he knew from Iraq, right? So this that happened, and then she comes home and we move on with normal life, and then that story develops. So
That wasn't enough.
no, that oh gosh. I wish that was everything.
Sorry, I just had to ask.
The I mean, we can take a potty break if we have to. This
No, but let's get to the point where your story gets to I'm sure there's several other add-ons to the story.
yeah. So
Let me,
this
let,
goes.
yeah.
Go
Let me
ahead.
try to understand this. So she's in Iraq. She's been raped for 2 weeks, right? Nobody knows about it other than the commander in chief there, or her
Nope.
commander.
No.
And
The perpetrator. That's it.
that, okay, just her, no. And then she doesn't say anything and nobody knows about it. And she happens to come back, marries you, goes down to Texas, and the same guy comes, like another guy comes in or
Yeah.
comes in, and then basically it just gets added on and on and on. So where does the story end in that whole system?
Well, so what preceded was a series of events that basically led me to believe that we were being hunted by rogue government officials. And it sounds crazy, but she told this story for 4 years, and every day had a new event and a new development. And this was when Epstein went to prison, and he was killed in his cell. And so there were people who were picked up by the FBI and sent to prison, and were beat up in their cells. And I mean, this was her law enforcement dogs that she was training had a part in this. One dog protected her from somebody who tried to attack her again when I was away for business on the road. And she would have all of these, and I was on a need to know basis because I didn't have a security clearance. And so there was a lot of like things that she would say were behind the guise of her security clearances that she had with the military. So she ends up getting medically retired from the military because all of her disability ratings added up to over 100%. So they medically retired her probably 2016, 2017. So a couple of years after her training was over. And the final straw in the government conspiracy story was that there was a general from the Pentagon who was involved in this web of problematic lies, the story, and he had been beat to death, almost to death, in his jail cell in Virginia, and he got sent to the Bethesda hospital on life support. And my brain is swimming. Again, this is all just constant chaos. Every single day is a new development. And I happen to know through the horse dental community a dentist who lives on the East Coast, and her dad was actually the director of the Bethesda hospital. And I had gotten to be friends with her and had kind of shared some of the story with her. And she reached out to me one day and she says, "Hey, I got something to tell you. I asked my dad about this general that's supposedly in his hospital and the circumstances that you've conveyed to me about this person. And my dad says this person doesn't exist." So she says, "I think you're being told a lie." So I confront my wife and I say, "Hey, I know this general doesn't exist, the one that you've been talking about for the last 2 months every day. Um, I'm not going to tell you how I know, but I have a contact in the Bethesda hospital that says this person doesn't exist. And what else are you telling me that's not true?"
Oh,
So
I bet she
the
went off.
entire story was false. And this story had ran our lives for 4 years. It changed everything about us. We had security protocols with the teachers at school and with our church leaders, and our neighbors knew that we were in trouble, and our neighbors were on the lookout for bad characters. And my one of the neighbors that lives a little ways down the road was a Black Hawk helicopter pilot for the Air Guard here in Utah. And once a month, he would, for his flight hours, he would fly the Black Hawk over by his house so his kids could wave at him, and then he would carry on. And I didn't know him, and I didn't know he was a pilot. So that was one of the things that she said, "Oh, they're watching us again," because he literally would circle above the house. It wasn't my house he was circling above, it was his house.
That's actually kind
And
of
so
funny.
and so she would, that was all part of her story. She's like, "Yeah, they're watching us again. I don't know." She knew that guy. She knew who it was, and she knew why he was flying here. But the
Wow.
story that got conveyed to me was they were must be taking pictures of us again or something like that.
So now I'm sure this is um, a ticking time bomb, I mean, like a nuclear bomb, and I bet that confrontation that must like you got a paradigm shift there, right? Obviously, you had a paradigm shift. You went, "Holy shit, this is she's whacked out," and and now this is like the break in the dam per se,
So
or you just kept
in
kept
that
going on.
in that conversation, she told me of, I want to say, well, so that initiated the divorce process. She decided that we should get divorced.
Wow.
Looking back, I realized that she discovered that I knew everything that she did and said and thought was a lie. And so I questioned absolutely everything. So the divorce was initiated in 2019. I was away from a trip, and when I was coming home, she told me I wasn't allowed to come back in the house, but I could park my RV trailer in the driveway and I could stay there. So for several awkward months, the kids weren't even allowed to come out and really say hi to me in my trailer because
Now,
immediately,
but that included also your other children that belonged to you originally?
at this point, all 5 children are mine and hers.
And so she kept them all inside.
Yeah. And that's where the alienation started, is because she started telling my kids stories that either made them mad at me or made them afraid of me, depending on their age. And so I'm with the, we decided, she decided that we should have an amicable divorce. And I didn't have any money. Any money that we'd made would disappear. And so I didn't have the resources. I didn't want to go through the family court process again because we'd already gone through that. So we did an amicable divorce. We both signed the paperwork. It cost us $30. We had to wait 45 days for the judge to sign it, and it was done. In that process, I discovered an additional $500,000 in mortgages that existed on parcels of the farm that I wasn't aware of, and I think 3 additional credit cards that she had taken out in my name that she had been using for years. So,
Okay. So let me ask you a question. So an audience member asked a question. Why were you she said, why were you guilty? I'm not really 100% sure how she said that, but were you feeling guilty about things at the time of all this help happening, or how did that, like, what are you feeling right now? Like at this point, like, are you feeling, I'm sure you're having a holy shit moment. And are you feeling guilty? Are you thinking, how can I fix this? What's the mindset here?
I don't think that I was able to wrap my head around any of it at this point. I was outside of myself. I was completely void of all emotions. I felt nothing. I thought very little. Um,
Were
and
you feeling guilty about stuff, or are you,
there
or
wasn't space in my head to feel anything. I
gotcha.
never I never cried for in the entire 12 years of that marriage. She probably saw me cry 3 times, and it was probably the 3 births of my children. I mean, like, I was void of all emotion. And it was those from July until February of when she told me that I needed to stay outside until our divorce finalized in February, sitting in my trailer by myself. I can hear my kids in the house. I can hear their voices.
It's okay. I understand.
Emotion didn't return to me until I had 6 months in solitary confinement to wrap my head around everything that had happened and everything that was going on.
Solitary confinement of being in that trailer, or actually being in
Yeah.
prison?
Nope. Solitary confinement of being in the trailer in my driveway, 50 feet away from my kids.
That's painful.
So at the time, we had 2 houses, and I was going to take one, and she was going to stay in the main house, and the kids were going to float back and forth. Then overnight, she decided to move out of state
With all the 5 kids?
with all 5 kids. Of course, she she swore up and down that they're going to have a better education system up there back in Idaho, and she was going to live with her brother. And now I know that she had told the kids that they couldn't tell anybody they were leaving, because if anybody found out they were leaving, their mom would get in trouble. So the kids didn't tell anybody at school. They didn't tell anybody at church. The kids told nobody. They were sworn to secrecy. And my kids had just lived through this whole government conspiracy story. They knew bad things were happening. They also knew that it was a lie. And they're on the same roller coaster as I am, but they're under her wing at this time, and very, very impressionable. My oldest daughter, I think she was probably 15, 14 or 15. She probably had the biggest opinion of all of it, which rightly so. And
What do you mean by that?
uh, she was the one who wanted to fight me. She was the one who confronted me about all of my wrongdoings, and I wasn't a perfect dad. And with all the chaos, how can you even think about parental perfection? And so she confronted me because my wife had told her everything that I ever did wrong. And the
I mean,
kids were
I,
kind of
I,
fading between hating me and being terrified that, they or their mom was going to get in trouble.
I can relate to that. I can relate to that. I understand that. That's hard. Um, so even your first children were kind of turning on you, or she turned them over.
Yeah. Yeah. That didn't last long. Once she moved out of state, it was actually my second child is a boy who's he's as bullheaded as I am. And
Mhm.
uh he's he doesn't have the gift of speaking nicely like his older sister does. He just kind of calls the shots how he sees them. And
We call
so they
we call those
they
people
move.
babies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they move into her brother's basement. So she had five kids. I believe she had one other kid with her at the time, because we kind of collected kids off and on over the years. So she had six kids between three bedrooms and a large closet in her brother's basement. And of course, she made sure the world knew that I was the one that made them homeless. Meanwhile, I'm back here.
How was she doing that? Was it on Facebook? She would post on Facebook?
How, whenever she would communicate, her brother immediately hated me because I was the problem.
Of
If
course.
she would communicate with family members, that's what the kids thought, is I made them homeless. Meanwhile, I'm moved back into our family home, which is a six-bedroom house with two levels, and
In Idaho?
in Utah.
Oh, in Utah. I meant, yeah.
Yeah, so I still have the house that
The
we
original
bought from her
Utah.
mom. Yeah,
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
yeah. So
So, okay,
she
financially and all that, how did that work out? Did you have to pay alimony? Did you have to pay the child support?
No, because our main income stream was her dog business that she took with her. And up to that point, I wasn't I had very minimal income because I was the backstage support for her program, for her chaos, for her life. And so she would have been determined the main breadwinner. And she took the dog business with her when she left. And so that was right when COVID was right after that. And COVID was a godsend for my business. And my business, when I had all the time in the world to focus on businessing, my business exploded during COVID. And I was
Awesome.
busier than I had ever been. And I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. When one door closes, another one could be opening simultaneously. And so, in all of this, I think, as I look back, I think the main lesson that I take from all this is, I can't get too focused on what's happening right now today if it's bad, because if today is bad, this bad thing is happening, so another good thing can come.
Wow. So the farm, is the farm gone? Did you sell it
She sold the farm uh,
and took the money?
without my knowledge. I knew at closing that the farm had been sold because my signature was required for a couple of the parcels. And then she was able to pay off the additional mortgages that we had accumulated,
Which you didn't know of?
which I didn't know about, and the credit cards that were in my name that were to the tune of, I don't know, 40 or $50,000 between the handful of credit cards, 3 credit cards, I think.
Now she
So in
doesn't
her
have your
mind,
credit cards anymore, does she?
no, no, there's a story to that too.
No, I just
But
yeah. I'm
but
just
it, it's it was she in her mind she redeemed herself from all of her sins because she had a good chunk of money from the sale of her family farm that she paid off all of the misdeeds and the lies and the hidden money and so in her mind she was redeemed. Goes to Idaho. She finally gets a place of her own. I actually go up there several times to help her put her place together, to build horse pens for the horses that they were, and help put together. Because I also weld and build fence, and so I was involved quite a bit in helping her move into her place. I shouldn't have been, but I was. I was there quite a bit.
Did you see the children?
Yeah, yep.
And how was
And there was
and those visits were cordial?
yeah, yeah. There was a couple times where she was going out of town and she wanted me to take my RV up there and park in her driveway so I could stay with the kids. It was a controlling situation, but she allowed me and the kids to have interaction, but carefully. Looking back, I see this. And
Well, you were a
right,
useful tool.
right. Yep. And she didn't have a man in her life, well, a constant man in her life to be that backup support type person.
Yeah.
My the oldest boy, the number 2 kid, he got into a fight with her, and it was a pretty bad deal. Um, and he was like 12 years old at the time, and she called me and she told me that if you don't come and get your son, I'm going to kill him. And I fully believed that's what she intended to do. So I drove up the very next day and I got him and all of his stuff and brought him back to my house in Utah. And he he had a lot of questions for me at that point because he was hearing what she was saying and it wasn't lining up with what he witnessed with his own eyes on my end. And that's where I learned probably the full impact of all of this on the kids is because he was able to tell me his version without being in risk of being in trouble with her.
What was an example? Just give me one example. What was not lining up? What was the question he would ask? I'm kind of curious.
So I started dating a gal with kids. And so my ex wife would tell my kids that I didn't love them. And so I replaced them with another woman and her kids.
Wow.
And it was little like believable things like that. Of course, she would have like backup information to prove it. And um, he was the one who didn't believe it. The other 4 did. Of course, the oldest one was 2 years older than him, and then the younger ones were really too young to
To
know
understand.
much of anything.
Yeah.
So he moves back with me a year and a half later. His older sister calls me. She hadn't talked to me in several months, and she calls me. She says, "Dad, I need to get out. Things are really bad." And my ex-wife had a boyfriend at the time who is now replacement dad. Um, and immediately he was very physically affectionate with my daughters, not so much with my sons. And so that concerned me. Um, And my daughter, the oldest, didn't appreciate having to hug him every time he was leaving to go back to his place. And so I told her, I said, well, if you're not comfortable with that, you can, it's okay for you to say something about it. So she approached my ex-wife and told her that she wasn't comfortable with certain things that she had been witnessing or that she was experiencing. And again, if in her entourage, the very second she smells the scent, you're out. And my daughter's world completely fell apart at that point. She was
You
trying
turned
for the
on
varsity. She was
her.
trying for the varsity volleyball team in her high school, and she didn't even make even the JV team. And my daughter was volleyball all-star. There's a lot of thought that my ex-wife made a few calls, and that's why the daughter didn't get on the team. So
Wow.
my oldest then moves back with me. She had a lot of questions, and she goes through a time decompressing from everything that has gone on in her recollection. And this is the time where they had been in contact with their biological mom, these two kids, for maybe a year at this point. And things were developing there, and her and I were getting reacquainted on a amicable kind of friendship level, and catching up on the stories to get like each other's side of the stories. And that filled in a lot of holes for me that I didn't know existed. And the older two kids, they come back here, they go back to the school that they grew up in, and they're both doing really well overall. They both graduated high school. The number two boy, I feel like I graduated for him, but he graduated early. And
So in graduation, I guess the first wife is still not in the picture, right?
she's in the picture. Yep.
Oh,
And
she's
she
back in the
appeared.
picture?
Yep. And she was present at both graduations.
What
Wife
about
number
those?
two.
Was she
Wife number
there?
two came to the oldest graduation, but not the second one. When she kicked him out, he was completely disowned by her at that point. And even now, has absolutely zero contact with his younger siblings because ex-wife and replacement dad don't allow them to
Talk.
even think our names at this point.
Wow. Okay, so that's a wild story.
I wish that was the end.
No, please tell me there's more.
So, I mean, she takes us back to court for custody and child support, and this is where the
for the
false
young
allegations.
for the three children that okay.
Yeah, for the younger three. And this was a 2-year process. Um,
And she has
when one
money.
person,
She has money.
I don't know where she has money from because the guy she married had none. And now all of a sudden they have a lot. She did sell her place that she moved into in Idaho. She sold that place and moved into his house, and I don't know how she has money because in the 2 years of family court with her, she had 6 attorneys at her disposal, not all at once. And I don't know if she fired them or if they fired her, but
Well,
6 attorneys during that
my
process.
ex-wife had 9.
No, oh, hey, boy, I don't feel so bad now.
She went through 9. I think a little more than that, but 9, definitely 9. Yeah. Couldn't get along with any one of them.
I
Yeah.
the paperwork that they filed in her behalf was jaw-dropping. And I felt the need to hire an attorney because what do? You have to respond to all of these false allegations, and the courts entertain all of this stuff.
Was she saying you're abusive?
Abusive, that the outlandish things that she would come up with, a lot of it didn't even happen.
But
you
haven't seen your kids what, in 4 years or 2 years at this time?
No, I was still having kind of every other weekend scenario with the two youngest.
So you would drive up there and drive back home?
My kids are, so yes, they would occasionally, they would come and hang out with me for a weekend, but for the majority of the time that I would see them, I would drive up to Idaho to watch their youth rodeos, which are always on the weekends. And
Yeah.
anytime that it was my vacation, my visitation weekend, the kids were always busy. And if I was to exercise that, I would be the bad guy by making them come and do nothing at my house rather than doing the things that they really enjoy doing and is their life passion, which is youth rodeo or soccer. Soccer is another sport that's in there as well with
Yeah.
one of the younger ones.
So you have limited interactions, more or
Yep.
less, right?
Yep.
So,
Limited interactions
and she's
during
finally
the
just,
entire time.
and she's throwing the book at you, basically.
Right. Yeah. And this is the stuff that I really talk about on my Dad from a Distance TikTok page, is because the experience that I had in family court both times, I think, is valuable because I am dead set on creating a change in this environment somehow, whether it's nationwide or even right here in my own home state. But the experience that I gained through all of this, I'm going to take that back because honestly, I am helping people now. I am I get messages from people daily, asking for how what is my take on their situation, which is very similar to what I went through.
Right.
So we did a 2-year court battle. She ended up settling for an extra $300 a month in child support and a
For
different custody arrangement.
That's it?
Yeah, that's all she wanted. Apparently the whole time was an extra couple $100 a month. I'm going to guess that between the two of us, we probably spent 70 grand in attorney's fees.
Oh no, I $100,000. $100,000.
I paid
10
more
years
to
of
my
life.
attorney in those 2 years than I would have paid her in child support till my youngest child aged out.
I know. But this is the point where people don't understand. This is like, you had 12, 15 years of hell you had to go through. You spent money and money and money and money. Nothing. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's a value system there that you need to live, right? And wasting all that money on what? Because you don't get along with the other person? Doesn't make sense. And then, okay, so sorry, I don't want to go into this tangent because I can go
Oh,
right
you're
into,
good.
I could go into it and I could really just, so now this is all done. You're basically having this conversation now. Now, are you seeing the kids now, or what's happening?
So at the end of our
They're
family court,
the three children that with her,
the
obviously.
three
So,
younger ones. So at the end of our family court scam, is what I have to call it. Then everything should have been like done in a way, except I'm still showing up at their weekend rodeos because now none of the kids really want to see me because she painted me out to be a horrible person. My youngest daughter, she would like to hang out with me. I would take her out to lunch when I'd go up there because that was all I had. That was all. Despite the custody schedule that we battled over for 2 years, she still didn't follow it. If I didn't follow my side, I was going to be hung in the gallows in Center Square. And if she didn't follow it, well, it was no big deal.
yeah.
So then she filed for a protective order against me because I confronted her husband at a youth rodeo because every time I see him, he's threatening to fight me or to kill me. He tried to run me over with two separate vehicles walking through a parking lot at a youth rodeo. And so I drove up to them. I was in my truck, hands on the steering wheel so they could see there wasn't anything in my hands. And I demanded that he and I have a conversation, a real verbal conversation, not a fist fight conversation. And as he stood there, he told me he didn't have anything to say to me. And I said, well, you have a lot to say to me because because all of this is going on and we need to put this to bed. These kids deserve better. In that conversation, he proceeded to tell me all the ways I should die and all the ways he was going to do it for me, and I should run my truck off a cliff or into a telephone pole. And they had some other members of their entourage standing around, and I was asked to just go sit in the grandstands and watch the rodeo, which I did. There was no incident after that. A couple days later, I received paperwork for a protective order. I was served at my house in Utah, and her witnesses had contrived this story that didn't exist. The biggest mistake I think that I made during all of that time was I was going to these rodeos by myself. I had no witnesses on my side. And so it was my word against all of theirs, and they were more than happy to write whatever it was she requested of them to do. So we deal with that protective order. I go to court. I have a long conversation with the judge. The judge swears up and down he doesn't want to interfere with my involvement with the kids because the kids weren't in danger at this point. It was my ex-wife that was filing the protective order. She insisted that it be between me and the kids, even though the kids were not in danger in any way, shape, or form. The judge allowed that out of a precaution. And in the paperwork, it has some confusing language that I agreed to without knowing exactly what it said. And so I show up 2 weeks later at another rodeo, and I get served for a violation of that protective order because I was within 300 feet of my kids, even though the judge swore up and down that he didn't want to interfere with my attendance at these kids' events. That's exactly what he ended up doing. So I get served for violation. I get ticketed for a violation of the protective order, which is a felony in Idaho. And I represented myself in the first hearing. The judge wanted me to plead guilty. I said, I absolutely will not plead guilty. I will take this to the end. And as I walked out of the courtroom, I stopped at the prosecuting attorney's office and left a message with him. He called me and I explained to him everything that had happened, and he went ahead and dismissed it, luckily. So we show up at the next hearing. The prosecuting attorney announces that they dismiss it, and I have the proof, the paperwork proof, emailed to me, and we go on our way. A couple months later, I get another protective order issued to me because now my kids feel like I'm stalking them when I go to their weekend rodeos. All of this happens, and I'm just like, you know what? The only way that I can get out of this is to surrender my parental rights. And I had been considering that. I told my attorney that's what I was considering doing when we ended our family court scam. He communicated with the other side that that's what I was willing to do, and then they pressured for that. They wanted that more than anything because we
So
had done
your
that.
attorney screwed you over.
I don't know if he screwed me over or did me a service in the
But
end.
why? But you know what you could have done? Why didn't you just not show up anymore? Just stay at home.
That's a good question. I
mean, that way you didn't have to give up. That way you didn't have to give up your parental rights.
Right.
I mean, I'm just saying. I'm just.
No, I'm. That's a valid question, and it's a question that a lot of people ask. And as I look back, I had to somehow completely dissociate myself with her control and manipulation because she was still orchestrating behind the scenes.
So it was a psychological thing for you to do because you needed to find peace. Is that a good way to look at it?
I think that's probably a good. That was definitely part of it. I
didn't. Okay, I want to talk. At this point, how was your health?
Well, if you look at pictures of me now versus even 3-4 years ago, I'm a different image now.
Are you eating healthier now?
Are
you healthier?
Yeah, okay. I'm eating healthier.
Did you have did you like, was there any conditions that were like, for me, my heart became an issue. Like I started to create issues there, and my body was breaking down. I don't know if that makes sense, but it was not doing well. So was there anything, because typically when men go through these type of stuff, and I'm sure women do too, but I'm only speaking from a male perspective, there's usually a condition that's added to that because of the amount of stress that were added to their lives. So was there something like that happening to you?
I was a much fatter man towards the end of that marriage. Um, Food was my emotional support. I have never been a big alcohol drinker, but I love Dr. Pepper. I mean, Dr. Pepper was that was what dulled the pain.
Mm.
And I didn't towards the end of the marriage, I didn't sleep well at all. I mean, I couldn't fall asleep until 1 or 2 in the morning. Looking back at it now, my system was just flooded with cortisol in looking for what the threat was every 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
And my sleeping so I made the decision to go ahead and proceed. I represented myself in juvenile court. I knew that's what they wanted.
And you gave
That's
it to
what
them.
I gave it to them. And of course, they pushed for it. They wanted it. Of course, she told the kids that I deserted them. She had the kids convinced that my presence was traumatic at their rodeos. And then she convinced them that my lack of presence was traumatic because I signed over my rights. And now I recently ran into them in Las Vegas, Nevada, of all places. Now the kids aren't even allowed to look my direction because my presence now again is traumatic.
How did you run into her in Las Vegas?
This time of year is Cowboy Central in Las Vegas, Nevada for the National Vegas
Uh,
Rodeo,
so you
I
were
ran
playing
into
dentist.
them.
You were playing
I
dentist.
I was there just on vacation, honestly.
Oh, okay.
I was there and ran into them. Just kind of it just
What did
weird.
what did the kids say?
Nothing. My youngest looked at me and she turned around and walked the other direction. That's the only response that they are allowed to give me at this point.
And she's still married to this guy?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I hope they stay married forever.
So
They deserve each other.
how does it feel that you're not seeing your three youngest children?
Well, I have to respond to that question with saying that my life now is boring, wonderfully so. I have peace in myself. My fiance, she's probably the biggest indicator for how my life has improved through all of this shit. Luckily, she grew up with a pretty traumatic life of her own, and she doesn't get emotionally involved in things that she shouldn't. And I think one of the benefits of her being by my side through all of this is she didn't get emotionally invested in that process. So she's a good indicator when she tells me that after I got over the pain of surrendering my parental rights and I came to terms with everything that had happened, that was the point where I changed as a human being for the good. My two older kids have also recognized that I'm less stressed, I'm happier, I'm healthier. I like to indulge in self-help books and building business books and
Awesome.
there's never
It's okay.
there's never been a time in my life as an adult where I have been allowed to focus 100% on my own well-being. And as much as I ache for my children, I believe they're physically safe. And had I not surrendered my parental rights, the hate that my ex has for me, that's more powerful than the love that she has for those children, would have continued to drag those kids through the hell that she wanted to punish me with. And I don't know if that makes sense outside of my head, but the kids in their lives no longer have the daily excuse of me causing havoc in their world. If they experience chaos now, it has nothing to do with me. And I fully believe that in my situation, that is valuable. Knowing that my two older kids were separated from their biological mother for 7 years, and during that time there was no chance or no hope at all of them redeveloping a relationship with her, and now they have. I have seen firsthand how that can happen, which is why I was able to make the decision that I made. As kids get older, they see things that parents can no longer hide.
That's true.
And as long as I am no longer directly responsible for the chaos and the emotional turmoil that my younger three kids are going through, that's going to allow for a reset at some point once it is safe for them to do so.
So thank you for sharing that. I know that's tough. Um, so I had something very similar as well. It was 2018. It started in February, January of that year. Mind you, we've been in battle of court of 10 plus years back and forth over stupid things. Custody. She would renege on deals. She would backtrack. Her new boyfriend, new husband was, the new father, and he's the replacement. I was erased. I was the no good, whatever. And then that year, I can't say what the issue was. I don't want to. So my daughter, we're having dinner. My middle child, we had problems, and we're at the dinner table, and my daughter said something very odd, and I was like, "What do you mean? That's what happened?" And I was like, I first my jaw dropped. Second, I wanted to go to that house and be violent.
Cause violence, yeah.
Right. I wanted to be violent. And then my son tells me another story that included the ex-wife, distributing videos, inappropriate videos of a child doing something. I'm going to leave that to your imagination. My daughter saw something that happened to be in the kitchen. Pornography was involved, and an adult was involved, and that's as far as I'm going to go. And then she was basically kind of like, you know, you don't want to say anything to your mom. Yeah. Was I pissed? Oh, I want to go. It was,
Can I ask a question?
yeah. But
What did that so you have kids during that entire 10-year period?
not all. This is the point where so we fought. We went to family court. We had a psychological evaluation. We had therapy. We had attorneys. That year probably cost me close to $50,000.
How do you think your kids benefited from that experience?
It fucking didn't. It didn't. It was all bullshit.
Do you
And
think
I
in
mean that,
20
and you know, my kids. So in my relationship, what sounds like what was happening with you, she was the hero, they were the victims, and you were the villain. And that's what usually the triangle, it's called triangle communication. And every time you're in that situation, you see that's where, so it's this is how it happens. Um say like your buddies are arguing over something, right? You and your buddy. Not you and your buddy, but two of your buddies are fighting over something. And one buddy comes to you and says, you know, he's blah 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 blah. And you're like, okay, I'll go talk to him. Then you go talk to him, and you're like, what's the problem? And he's like, well, he's blah 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 blah. And then you go back and you try to be the peacemaker, right? But if the response was, you got a problem with him, go talk to him. Because now you're not the peacemaker, you're not the person that's solving other people's problems, right? When it comes to a child, very similar situation. You may discipline him or her, depending on what the situation is, or you might say no, and then they'll run to mom, and then mom says, you know what, he's just an asshole. And you deserve better. And all of a sudden, that child now knows they can disrespect you. And they can run to her and they can feel validated. But it doesn't fix anything. So my children, for the 18 plus years living between both of us, more or less, that's their life. That was their life. So what benefit was that?
What do you think your kids are going to say about that experience as in 20 years, they look back and they talk about their childhood? How are they going to relate to other people as everybody sits around the table and discusses their childhood at a Christmas dinner?
I could tell you what's going on right now. My oldest son, he's kind of, we've rekindled. And let me just add you, that was a year that I gave up custody. I didn't give up parental rights. I just gave up custody because it wasn't working. And just like you, I said, no matter what that looks like, at least it's some type of consistency of whatever that looks like. And I just
Yeah.
got to live with it because I got to fix me. You know, first off, I'm financially in trouble. Second, I'm healthy. I have a health issue that I need to recover. And then I just need to figure out my life because I was consumed in this battle that was my life, right? And I was not a good person by all. I was angry. I was all this. But now looking now, my oldest child, I got him to move away as far as he can, which was a good thing for him because he got to learn about himself. That was the most thing. My youngest, my middle child boy, I'm worried about him. He's very, very easy to go down rabbit holes. And I mean that in a negative way. I don't mean that in a very positive way. I mean that in a negative way. And he's very spontaneous and he's very addictive to things. So if you could think of what I'm thinking about, he's very easy in those situations. But he, um, without really knowing, I didn't know. He got in the car and and we don't have a solid relationship because actions that he took because of what his mom said about me, and it caused some other issues down the line. And so I kind of just said, I need to put a pause on this. I still love you, but you need to apologize what you said, more or less. And he says, no, I didn't say that. Screw you. So we haven't really talked. We've talked, but we haven't really talked. But what he did this summer was him and his mom and brother had a big, huge fight. I don't know what that was about. This is all hearsay now, so I just don't know. But what triggered was him to get in the car and drive across the country to my hometown, Vancouver, Canada, to live with my family. Now, I don't have a relationship with him, but he's living in Vancouver, dad's hometown. And yeah, he's there. So part of me, I'm happy he's done that because he gets to learn about Vancouver. He gets to learn where I grew up. He gets to learn about, maybe he learns more about dad than not what the ex-wife was feeding him. So I'm hoping that's good. And then the other thing is my daughter, we were doing last year about this time, she got in a car accident and she needed a new car. And we're not very speaking per se, but she comes to me and she says, Dad, you got any money? And I'm kind of like, honey, I would love to give you money, but we don't really have a relationship. And it's kind of hard for me to give you money when you don't have a relationship. And she kind of just went, she's my youngest daughter. So she kind of, you know, um, uh, so I said, okay, all right, okay, let's do this. Let me find you a car, and let me find you something that will be in your price range and be affordable, but also good enough car to get you where you need to get to. It's an in between car. It's not going to be a brand new car, but I'll go look for one and we'll get a good car for you in the meantime. And at that time, find if you can get some more money from your grandparents, your mother, whatever. And whatever I can afford, I'll put some in. And it was good. We were texting, we were calling, we were talking and all this. And I did tell her, I says, honey, but before we go down this path, I need to let you know that if it does happen that your mom finds out, she could interfere with this relationship. Is that going to be a problem? And she's, oh no, that's not a problem. I can work that out. So needless to say, for a month we're looking for a car. I found a couple of cars and we explained. I was like educating her on the cars that she should get. 'Cause I was doing the father thing. Here, look at this
Right.
video, and if she did, that's fine. But I was telling her we should get this type of car. This is why we should get this car. And she was searching. I was searching, and we got to the point where the mother gets involved. And the mother turns around and basically just said, I found a car and she bought it. Well, it was a Ford Fiesta, one of those crappy cars you can get, and the most unsafe car you can get. And what happened was, I said, okay, great, honey, that's great. I'm glad your mom got the car. I'm glad that all that worked out. Awesome. I'm happy for you, right? What am I going to say? I didn't say it was a bad car and all that. I didn't want to go down that path. Well, guess what happened? It didn't have tags on it. It needed to get like an extra $10,000 on repairs.
Oh
And
wow.
she calls me up and says, well, where's my money? And I was like, that's not the conversation we're having. A conversation we're having is we're going to work together and find the car together. And I would give you something. And she says, well, you owe me money. And I was like, honey, I don't owe you money, but if you want some money, I'll give you some money. I'll give you a couple $100 just to say I gave you money. And she goes, no, I want thousands of dollars. And I'm like, that's not going to work. because your mother bought the car and she took the responsibility of buying the car. That's not my fault. And you guys went down that path. Well, we haven't spoken since then.
It was probably a triangulation event.
Oh, absolutely.
I would guess.
Yeah. So
So the question that I have still, as I talk to other parents in similar situations, is set aside mom and dad's issues, set aside the attorneys, set aside the guardian ad litems, the mediators, the court ordered psychologists. How do the kids feel? And how are they going to tell this story when they become adults? And for everybody, the answer is different, I believe. But at least in my situation, my kids can say, there was a time where dad just disappeared out of the picture. I didn't really, because my business overlaps with their weekend hobby. And so, especially moving into the summer rodeo season, there's going to be some crossing of paths. But
well, I did not have, like, I still text them, the ones that I don't. My middle child. I write letters to him because I don't know. I don't have a cell phone number, but I write letters to him, wishing him well, hope everything's going well, kind of like that kind of stuff. My middle child, my daughter, no, my youngest, my daughter, send texts. I also send letters to her. Um, I also send my oldest. We communicate, we talk, we send texts back and forth. We have conversations here and there. Actually, the funny story on that one. Well, I shouldn't say it because the ex-wife could hear it. I don't want to talk about that one. It's
we
too
don't want to
fresh.
divulge all our secrets.
No, no, it's too fresh because then
Yeah,
he might get in trouble, and I don't want to get like that's. I'm trying to protect him from her,
right.
so I don't want to do that. So there's a lot of yeah. So with when you say what would be like 20 years from now, I don't have an answer. I lived I honestly live day to day with them. Every
See,
day.
I grew up.
Well,
I grew up
here's my
in
thing. Every day that I have a chance to talk to my child or I get to see my child, that's the best day I can ever have.
right. Yeah, without a doubt.
Other than that, that's the only thing. I mean, so if 20 years from now they come back, I mean, the door's open. I don't close it, but I'm not gonna. I also have boundaries now. I don't have people walking all over me like I
Right.
used to. So,
You know, I watched a documentary the other day called Divorce Court, and it talks a lot about the family court system and how it developed and roughly at what point in history it came on the scene. And it talks about the big business that divorce court, that the family court is now. And I, more than anything, I think what leaves me questioning as I fall asleep at nighttime, the questions I have are all of these children that are experiencing this family court scam, because I don't have a better word for it. As they move forward into their adult lives, are they going what are they going to perceive about what happened to them? Because the adults, we know what's going on. We are in charge of the attorneys and everybody. We're paying the bills. But how do the kids see that? And then how does that translate into their adult lives? And is it either are they smart enough to not repeat it, or are they dumb enough to stay in the system? And like my oldest boy that's 18 now, he is terrified of the thought of getting married and having children.
yeah, it's a psychological warfare
Right.
on his end. He's thinking that every woman that he meets is going to be an enemy to him.
Yeah.
And but you talk. I mean, when we first talked about this, we talked about solutions and what are the solutions, and I've concluded simply this: you want to file for divorce, okay. Number one, no attorneys. The court appoints a mediator. In that mediation, all your financials are discussed. Everything's discussed. Everything gets split down the middle. Anything that is not paid for will be paid for. All the assets will be sold until everything's paid for. Until then, divorce will not happen. Number one. Number two, I think co-parenting classes is a must. You both must attend a co-parenting class while you're still married until all your assets and everything is sold, and you are psychologically evaluated on how you're handling and they'll come to your house, they'll come to here, and all that money that you paid for attorneys on is being paid. This is how you're paying for your things. And at the end of the day, that goes in front of a judge. You all appear in front of a judge, and whatever they say about you and your parenting, and you'll have a psychological evaluation and everything like that, will determine how the child support will turn out, and who the cut. And I think child support should not be I think it should be 50-50. Because if it's
Yeah.
50, I think custody should be 50-50. I also think everything should be 50-50, because if if a man's living at home trying to support his home and support another home, like in my case, I was living in a 2-bedroom home apartment, and I barely ate while I took care of the kids. And then when I didn't have the kids, I mean, I don't even know how I survived those days. I really just don't. I look back and I go, how did I do that? Because I was financially strapped, because all my money was wrapped up into courts, and we had properties and all that. I was paying credit cards. And I was so stubborn, and I mean this, and I think everyone needs to go to financial class. I think when you get divorced, it all goes through some type of training. I call it training on your financials, on how to take care of your kids, how to do that. And I think that's what needs to be happening. And you'll get rid of all the sham that goes on in the courts, because once you do that, I mean, who wants to get divorced? Because
Right.
it's going to be an ordeal. And I think it should be an ordeal. I really do. After what I've been through and what you've been through and what other people go through, I think it needs to be something that drastic.
And I think that documentary that I talked about talks about how divorce happens in Scandinavia, in Greenland, right?
Okay.
And the government has a dollar amount that it costs to support a child. And I mean, our government can calculate this stuff in their easy, because they calculate welfare, they calculate food stamps, they know what families in zip codes have to pay to be able to survive. I think there needs to be depending on what zip code you live in, there is a dollar amount that it costs to raise a child, and that is split right down the middle. Custody is split right down the middle unless there is a law enforcement involvement in some way, shape, or form. There has to be a history of violence, a history of abuse, not the potential for violence or the potential for abuse, because we all have the potential to be violent and abusive.
Of course we can. Yeah, absolutely.
And I never had to deal with alimony. Obviously, she would have paid me alimony because she was the one that took the income producing business, and that's why she wanted to be amicable when we divorced, was so it would lessen her financial obligations.
And you were being the male and a father, and you didn't want to hurt the mother.
And I was being the peacemaker. I was being the one who was going to get along, because we were about to tear everything apart.
Yeah.
And so I think family court has no business existing.
No.
There are other legal ways to deal with situations of abuse and the other dynamics that exist. Family court is a racket. The judges, the attorneys, the GALs, the mediators, the court-appointed psychologists and mental health professionals are all golfing buddies on the weekends.
Do you know how much money they make in divorce?
I don't know what the nationwide annual expense on family court is, but it has to be astronomical.
In the bill,
Judges,
in the bill.
judges, yeah, judges afford nice retirements off of family court, and in some jurisdictions, they are awarded in their pension a percentage of what they collect in child support.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, not everywhere, but
Wow.
in some jurisdictions, the child support calculation goes into the retirement of the judge. And when a
Wow.
judge retires, they go back and be a mediator for the same system.
It's just
So
I 100% agree with you on this whole divorce stuff, and I think it needs to be, or yeah, unfortunately, it's a billion-dollar business, and they're not going to get rid of it.
it has to be the upper billions
Oh,
because it's massive.
oh yeah, I'm talking about you. If you look at these,
Entire,
you look at these family lawyers, they're wealthy,
yeah,
and
they're
that's
driving Bentleys and sending their kids to Ivy League schools
yeah, on backs of us.
off of you and me.
Yeah, yeah. So now you're so obviously you're in better health today. I'm grateful to hear that. You're really good relationship with your ex, number one.
Right.
You got your two oldest kids from your ex, number one, and it's good, right? That's a good situation.
Life is
Good.
I don't understand why it's so good, but it's good.
That's good.
And in all 50 states, there exists adult adoption. And yeah, so if you have in my situation, if my three younger kids want to again be legally mine on paper, because the courts don't change DNA as much as courts would love to change DNA.
Yeah.
The adult child and the adoptive parent can go back to court without the other problematic parent and and readopt that adult child. And this would be for inheritance and healthcare and a lot of different things.
Right.
But all 50 states have an adult adoption procedure available. And wrap your head around that.
Wow.
So I guess in my view, this parent journey that I'm on is lifelong. It's not just the first 18 years and then I'm relieved. But I created children, and it's my obligation for my entire life to be a parent. And there might be a time period where I'm not, but my obligation is to be available as the parent when my offspring need me to be that.
Right.
And if they don't ever need it, I have to be okay with that.
Right.
If they don't ever need it, that's amazing, because that means that what I taught them in the time that I had with them helped them to be self-sufficient, and they don't need any of us. They're able to go out in the world and do it on their own and be rock stars. That's my hope. But my parenting journey apparently is different than some, because I'm going to have grandkids one day. Whether my middle daughter, who wants to hate me, wants to realize it or not, she's going to have kids one day, and I'm the biological grandfather.
So, are you afraid that your legacy is okay? Are you afraid? I'm going to try how to phrase this. Are you in fear that they'll never get to know you?
I have to I have to create a foundation for peace and happiness and success in my own existence that doesn't rely on the existence of my children.
No, I get that, but aren't
And
you kind of
so
like okay?
and so as I think about the answer to your question, I'm not afraid of that, because what I've already lived through, most people can never even imagine. And so As long as my kids are healthy and happy and successful and productive, that's what any parent wants. If for whatever reason they don't want to have a relationship with me, it will be because they still believe what their mother tells them. And it's probably better off they aren't around me anyways, because I have zero tolerance for any of that behavior. So
But
moving
is that
forward,
but is that because why, like, I'm trying to tie this back to your TikTok and what, because in from my case, my writings is a footprint, or like my writings are for my children. I want them to understand that dad wasn't a bad person after all. That the stories that were told are not all true. So I have it written down. So if something happens to me, God forbid, they have a place to go to the depositories of my books and things like that, where I hope they get a sense of who I was, not what they were told. Um, so I'm trying to tie this to your TikTok, because you are blowing up on TikTok, like you are rocking it, and you're telling these stories, and they're wild. Like we just spent, a good chunk of hours here, and they're getting like, I was like, well, when do we stop? Right. I thought I had stories, but my God, you have good ones too. You could write a whole book. Um, but is it because the TikTok is maybe a place, and maybe it's a subconscious thing where you just want to tell your story, so just in case someone wants to come by and listen to that, and hopefully they have answers to it?
so if I only had 5 followers in my entire life and it was my 5 kids, that would be more than enough. My the younger generation is so tied to social media
Mm.
that if my story is on TikTok and Facebook and YouTube, there is no possible way that my kids won't run into it one day.
And are you grateful for that? Do you want that to happen or no?
Absolutely. Because I can show a side of myself that they aren't allowed to see. They're not authorized to see right now.
Right.
And I can show glimpses of what I do, what the real me does.
Mm.
And I can have conversations with them about these situations that when they're old enough to understand, it's there. So maybe that's kind of the same thing as yours. I have a journal of letters to my kids that I've written to them, but since I've been able to put my stuff on social media, and if I have multiple platforms, which I want to have, I'm developing some other stuff.
Yeah.
Then if TikTok goes away, there's still the other ones.
Yeah.
And maybe I don't live long enough to see my grandkids, but my story is still out there in the cloud, and no matter what she does, she cannot make it go away.
Yeah.
And I talk about some hard things. I talk about some tough truths that I know my kids would not want to hear, but at some point in our adult lives, we have to face the hard truth.
Yeah. I started writing my journey about my divorce. I just published my first book, and I think there's two more books out of that story. I try to keep it. I try to keep it soft. I don't try to, like, I tell stories, but I don't tell like the one I told you about my kids.
Yeah.
Um, that was that was tough. I still think about that. Um, I miss my daughter a lot. My middle child, he used to make me, he was funny, charismatic. He was the trouble child. The oldest, he and I just, you just miss those moments. You miss the smiles. You miss the hand touching yours, cuddling it up. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, those are the things I miss. And I lost out their teenager lives. I didn't get to see their teenager lives. I mean, I got to see their younger lives, which was really awesome. But I also missed out I didn't get a chance to see my daughter and my daughters and my middle child's graduation because it was I wasn't allowed to be there.
Right.
They, so
Yeah.
much hate. They'd rather not have me there than cause pain. Um, yeah.
Yeah. I there's a reason for all this, man. I am convinced that there's a reason why we're here talking right now. There's a reason why TikTok developed for me like it has. There's a reason why I lived a government conspiracy and why replacement dad is such a gullible buffoon. There's a reason for all of it. And I trust in a higher intelligence that's taking us someplace better than we ever could have imagined. And yet it's all different than we thought it would be.
True. Yeah. Well, with that said, I think we should end it there. That'd be a good spot for us to end. Uh, where can people find you?
Right now, I have a TikTok page called Dad from a Distance. It sounds like I'm going to be starting a Facebook page with the same name. I have a YouTube channel with the same name. So, Dad from a Distance. The YouTube channel has a very short list of content right now. I'm still trying to understand how those algorithms work. And that's what I've got for now.
Okay. Well,
So, yeah.
I want to appreciate you coming on, and I want to thank all my listeners there, the ones Amy Thomas, Juliana, who've been they've been kind of there were some spots where you were saying some things and they were very encouraging of that. So, um, yeah. So hang tight there for a second and we'll just close it out. And I want to say thank you for all the audience there. Thank you for showing up. I appreciate it. And if you missed part of this, I will repost this and you'll get it here shortly. And in the meantime, thank you for joining, Justin. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That was some serious hard truth there. All right. Give me a second. Hang on. Thank you, everybody.